I have one more question, Dr. Wu. How many different species you have made so far? I'm not exactly sure, Wu said. I believe the number at the moment is 15. 15 species. Do you know, Ed? Yes, 15, Ed Regis said, nodding. You don't know for sure? Wu smiled. I stopped counting after the first dozen. And you have to realize that sometimes we think we have an animal correctly made, from a standing point of the DNA, which is our basic work. And the animal grows for 6 months, and then something untowards happened, and we realized there was some error. The releaser genes isn't operating, a hormone not being released, or some other problem in the development sequence. So we have to go back to the drawing board with that animal, so to speak. At the time, I thought I had more than 20 species, but now only 15. And it's the one of the 15 species, what was the name? Proconsagraphus, Grant said. You have made some Proconsagraphuses, or whatever they're called? Malcolm asked. Yes, Wu said immediately. Compies are distinctive animals, and we made an unusual large number of them. Why is that? Well, we have Jurassic Park to be a real and environment as possible, as astonished as possible. And the Proconsagraphus are actually scavengers from the Jurassic period, rather like jackals. So we wanted to have the compies around to clean up. You mean to dispose of carcasses? Yes, if there were any. But the only 230 odd animals in our total population. We don't have many carcasses, Wu said. That wasn't the primary objective. Actually, we wanted the compies for another kind of waste management entirely. Which was? Well, Wu said, we have some very big herbivores on this island. We have specifically tried not to breed the biggest sauropods. But even so, we have got several animals in excess of 30 tons walking around out there, and many of the other 5 to 10 ton area. That gives us two problems. One is feeding them, and in fact, we must import food to the island every 2 weeks. There is no way an island this small can support these animals for any time. But the other problem is waste. I don't know if you ever seen the elephant droppings, Wu said, but they're substantial. Each spore is roughly the size of a soccer ball. Imagine the droppings of a brontosaur, 10 times as large. Now imagine the droppings of a herd of such animals as we keep here. And the largest animals do not digest their food terribly well, so that they excreted a great deal. And in the 60 million years since dinosaurs disappeared, apparently the bacteria that specializes in breaking down their feces disappears too. At least the sauropod feces don't decompose readily. That's the problem? Malcolm said. I assure you it is, Wu said, not smiling. We had a hell of a time trying to solve it. You probably know that in Africa, there is a specific insect, the dung beetle, which eat elephant feces. Many other large species have associated creatures that have evolved to eat their excrements. Well, it turns out compies will eat the feces of large herbivorous and redigest it. And the droppings of the compies are really broken down by the contemporary bacterial. So given enough compies, our problems were solved. How many compies did you make? I have forgotten exactly, but I think the target population was 15 animals. And we attained that, and very nearly so, in 3 branches. We did a batch every 6 months until we had the number. 15 animals, Malcolm said. It's a lot to keep track of. The control room is built to do exactly that. They'll show you how it's done. Here's the control room, Ed Regis said. Now that you know how the animals are made, you'll see the control room for the park itself. Before we go out through the thick glass window, the room was dark. The monitors were off, except for 3 that display spinning numbers and the image of a large boat. What's going on? Ed Regis said. Oh hell, they're docking. Docking? Every 2 weeks, the supply boat comes in from the mainland. One of the things this island doesn't have is a good harbor, or even a good dock. It's a little hairy to get the ship in when the seas are rough. Could be a few minutes. I guess we have to wait then. Ellie turned to Dr. Wu. You mentioned before that sometimes you make an animal and it seems to be fine, but as it grows, it shows itself to be flawed. Yes, Wu said. I don't think there's any way around that. We can duplicate the DNA, but there's a lot of timing and development, and we don't know if anything is working unless we actually see an animal develop correctly. How do you know if it's developing correctly? No one has ever seen these animals before? Wu smiled. I have often thought about that. I suppose it was a bit paradox. Eventually, I hoped, paleontologists such as yourself We'll compare our animals with the fossil record to verify the development sequence. But the animal we just saw, the Velociraptor, you said it was Mongoliensis. From the location of the amber, Wu said, it is from China. Interesting, Grant said. I just dig up an infant Anthropus. Are there any full-grown raptors here? Yes, Ed Regis said, without hesitation. 8 adult females. The females are the real hunters. They're pack hunters, you know. Will we see them on the tour? No, Wu said, looking suddenly uncomfortable. And there was an awkward pause. Wu looked at Ed Regis. Not for a while, Ed Regis said cheerfully. The Velociraptors had been integrated into the park setting just yet. We kept them in a holding pen. Can I see them there? Grant said. Why, yes, of course. In fact, while we're waiting, he glanced at his watch. You might want to go around and have a look at them. I certainly would, Grant said. Absolutely, Ellie said. I want to go too, Tim said eagerly. Just go around back of this building, passing the support facility, and you'll see the pen. But don't get too close to the fence. Do you want to go too? He said to the girl. No. You want to play a little pickle? Throw a few? Well, sure, Ed Regis said. Why don't you and I go downstairs and we'll do that, while we wait for the control room to be opened. Grant walked with Ellie and Malcolm around the back of the main building, with the kid tagging along. What do you know about Velociraptors? Grant asked Tim. He was just making conversation. It's a small carnivore that hunted in packs, like Deinonychus, Tim said. That's right, Grant said. Although the evidence for pack hunting is all circumstantial. It derives in parts from the appearance of the animals, which are quick and strong, but small for dinosaurs. Just 150 to 300 pounds each. We assume they hunted in groups if they were able to bring down larger prey. And there were some fossil findings in which single large prey animal is associated with several raptor skeletons, suggesting they hunted in packs. And of course, raptors were larger brains, more intelligent than most dinosaurs. How intelligent is that? Malcolm asked. Depends on who you're talking to, Grant said. Just as paleontologists have come around to the idea that dinosaurs were probably warm-blooded, a lot of us started to think some of them might have been quite intelligent too, but nobody knows for sure. They left the visitor area behind, and soon they heard a loud hum of generators, smelled the faint odor of gasoline. They passed a grove of palm trees, and saw a large, low concrete shed with a steel roof. The noise seems to come from there. They looked inside the shed. It must be a generator, Ellie said. It's big, Grant said, peering inside. The power plant actually extended 2 stories below ground level, a vast complex of winning turbulence and piping that ran down into the earth, lit by harsh electric bulbs. They can't need all of this for a resort, Malcolm said. They're generating enough power here for a small city. Maybe for the computers? Maybe. Grant heard bleating and walked north a few yards. He came to an animal enclosure with goats. By a quick count, he estimated there were 15 or 16 goats. What's that for? Ellie asked. Beats me. Probably they feed them to the dinosaurs, Malcolm said. The group walked on, followed a dirt path through the dense bamboo grove. At the far side, they came across a double-layered chain-link fence 12 feet high, with spirals of barbed wires at the top. There was an electric hum along the outer fence. Beyond the fence, Grant saw dense clusters of large ferns 5 feet high. He heard a snarling sound, a kind of snuffle, then the sound of crunching footsteps coming closer. Then a long silence. I don't see anything, Tim whispered finally. Shh. Grant waited. Several seconds passed, flies buzzed in the air. He still saw nothing. Ellie tapped him in the shoulder and pointed. Amid the ferns, Grant saw the head of an animal. It was motionless, partially hidden in the fronds. The 2 large, dark eyes watched him coldly. The head was 2 feet long. From a pointed snout, a long row of teeth ran back to the hole of an auditory meatus which served as an ear. The head reminded him of a large lizard, or perhaps a crocodile. The eyes did not blink, and the animal did not move. Its skin was leathery, with a petrous texture, and basically the same coloration as the infant's, yellow-brown with darker reddish markings, like the strips of a tiger. As Grant watched, a single forelimb reaches up very slowly to part the ferns beside the animal's face. The limb Grant saw was strongly muscled. The hand had 3 grasping fingers, each ending in curved claws. The hand gently, slowly, pushes aside the ferns. Grant felt a chill and thought, "He's hunting us." For a mammal like man, there was something indescribably alien about the way reptiles hunted their prey. No wonder men hated reptiles. The stillness, the coldness, the pace was all wrong. To be amongst alligators or other large reptiles was to be reminded of a different kind of life, a different kind of world now vanished from the earth. Of course, this animal didn't realize that he had been spotted. The attack suddenly came from left and right. Charging raptors covered the 10 yards to the fence with shocking speed. Grant had a blurred impression of powerful 6-foot-tall body, stiff balanced tail, limbs with curved claws, open jaws with rows of ragged teeth. The animals snarl as they come forward and then leapt bodily into the air, raising their hind legs with their big dagger claws. Then they struck the fence in front of them, throwing off twin bursts of hot sparks. The velociraptors fell backward to the ground, hissing. The visitors all moved forward, fascinating. Only then did the third animal attack, leap up into the air to the fence at chest level. Tim screamed in fright as the spark of explosives all around him. The creature snarled in a low reptilian hissing sound and leapt back among the ferns. Then they were gone, leaving behind a faint odor of decay and hanging acrid smoke. Holy shit, Tim said. It was so fast, Ellie said. Pack hunters, Grant said, shaking his head. Pack hunters for whom ambush is an instinct. Fascinating. I wouldn't call them tremendously intelligent, Malcolm said. On the other side of the fence, they heard snorting in the palm trees. Several heads poked slowly out of the foliage. Grant counted 3, 4, 5. The animals watched them, staring coldly. A black man in coveralls came running up to them. Are you all right? We're okay, Grant said. The alarms were set off. The man looked at the fence, dense and charted. They attacked you? 3 of them did, yes. The black man nodded. They do that all the time. Hit the fence, take a shock, and never seem to mind. Not too smart, are they? Malcolm said. The black man paused and squinted at Malcolm in the afternoon light. Be glad for that fence, senor, he said, and turned away. From beginning to end, the entire attack could not have taken more than 6 seconds. Grant was still trying to organize his impressions. The speed was astonishing. The animals were so fast, he had hardly seen them move. They are remarkably fast. Yes, Grant said. Much faster than any living reptile. A bull alligator can move quickly, but only over a short distance. 5 or 6 feet. Big lizards like the 5-foot Komodo dragons of Indonesia have been clocked at 13 miles an hour, fast enough to run down a man. And they killed men all the time. But I guess the animals behind the fences was more than twice than fast. Cheetah speed, Malcolm said. 60 to 17 miles an hour. Exactly. But they seem to dart forward, Malcolm said, rather like birds. So these velociraptors look like reptiles, with the skin and general appearance of reptiles. But they move like birds, with the speed and predatory intelligence of birds. Is that about it? Malcolm said. Yes, Grant said. I say they display a mixture of traits. Does that surprise you? Not really, Grant said. It's actually rather close to what a paleontologist believed a long time ago. Actually, what I was driving at was this, Malcolm said. Is it a persuasive animal to you? Is it in fact a dinosaur? I say so, yes. And that coordinated attack behavior? Is to be expected, Grant said. According to the fossil records, packs of velociraptors were capable of bringing down animals that weigh 1,000 pounds, like Tyrannosaurus, which could run as fast as a horse. Coordination will be required. How did they do that without language? Oh, language wasn't necessary for coordinated hunting, Ellie said. Chimpanzees do it all the time. A group of chimps will stalk a monkey and kill it. All communication is by eyes. And were the dinosaurs in fact attacking us? Yes. They would kill us and eat us if they could, Malcolm said. I think so. The reason I ask, Malcolm said, is that I've been told large predators such as lions and tigers were not born man-eaters. Isn't that true? These animals must learn somewhere along the line that human beings are easy to kill. Only afterwards do they become man-killers. Yes, I believe that's true, Grant said. Well, these dinosaurs must be even more reluctant than lions and tigers. After all, they come from a time before human beings, or even large mammals existed at all. God knows what they think when they see us. So I wonder, have they learned, somewhere along the line, that humans are easy to kill? The group fell silent as they walked. In any case, Malcolm said, I shall be extremely interested to see the control room now. Was there any problem with the group? Hammond asked. No, there was no problem at all. They accepted your explanation? Why shouldn't they? Wu said. It's all quite straightforward in the board structs. It's only the details that get sticky. And I wanted to talk about the details with you today. I could think it's a matter of aesthetics. John Hammond winkered his nose, as if he smelled something disagreeable. They were standing in the living room of Hammond's elegant bungalow, set back among palm trees in the northern section of the park. The living room was eerie and comfortable, fitted with half dozen of video monitors showing animals in the park. The file Wu had brought stapled, Animal Development, version 4.4, lay on the coffee table. Wu, 33 years old, was acutely aware that he had worked for Hammond all his professional life. Hammond had hired him right out of graduate school. Of course, there are practically consequences as well, Wu said. I really think you should consider my recommendation for Phase 2. We should go to version 4.4. You want to replace all the current stock of animals? Hammond said. Yes, I do. Why? What's wrong with them? Nothing, Wu said. Except that they are real dinosaurs. That's what I asked for, Henry, Hammond said, smiling. And that's what you gave me. I know, Wu said. But you see, how could he explain this to Hammond? Hammond hardly ever visited the island, and it was a political situation that Wu was trying to convey. Right now, as we stand here, almost nobody in the world has ever seen an actual dinosaur. Nobody knows what they really look like. The dinosaurs we have now are real, Wu said, pointing to the screen around the room. But in certain ways, they are unsatisfactory, unconvincing. I can make them better. Better in what way? For one thing, they move too fast. People aren't accustomed to seeing large animals that are so quick. I'm afraid visitors will think the dinosaurs look speeded up like film running too fast. But Henry, these are real dinosaurs. You said so yourself. I know, but we can easily bred slower, more domestic dinosaurs. Domesticated dinosaurs? Hammond snorted. Nobody wants domestic dinosaurs, Henry. They want the real thing. But that's my point, Wu said. I don't think they do. They want to see their expectations, which is quite different. You said it yourself, John. This park is an entertainment. And entertainment has nothing to do with reality. Entertainment is antithetical to reality. Hammond sighed. Now, Henry, are we going to have another one of those abstract discussions? You know I like to keep it simple. The dinosaurs we have now are real. Well, not exactly, Wu said. He paced the living room, pointing to the monitors. I don't think we should kid ourselves. We haven't recreated the past here. The past is gone. It can never be recreated. What we have done is reconstructing the past, or at least a version of the past. And I'm saying we can make a better version. Better than real? Why not, Wu said. After all, these animals are already modified. We inserted genes to make them penable and to make them lysine dependent. And we have done everything we can to promote growth and accelerate development in adulthood. Hammond shrugged. That was inevitable. We didn't want to wait. We have investors to consider, of course. But I'm just saying, why stop there? Why not push ahead to make exactly the kind of dinosaur that we had liked to see? One that is more acceptable to visitors, and one that is easier for us to handle. A slower, more docile version for our park. Hammond frowned. But then the dinosaurs wouldn't be real. But they're not real now, Wu said. That's what I'm trying to tell you. There isn't any reality here. He shrugged helplessly. He could see he wasn't getting through. Hammond had never been interested in technical details, and the extension of the argument was technical. How could he explain to Hammond about reality of DNA dropouts, the gaps in the sequence that Wu had been obligated to fill in, making the best guesses he could, but still making guesses? Now, Henry, Hammond said, putting his arm around Wu's shoulder, if you don't mind me saying so, I think you're getting cold feet. You have been working very hard for a long time, and you have done a hell of a job. A hell of a job. And it's finally time to reveal to some people what you have done. It's natural to be a little nervous, to have some doubts, but I am convinced, Henry, that the world will be entirely satisfied. Entirely satisfied. As he spoke, Hammond steered him towards the door. But John, remember back in '87 when we started to build the containment devices? We didn't have any full-grown adults yet, so we had to predict what we'd need. We ordered big taser shockers, cars with cattle prods mounted on them, guns that blow out electric nets. all built to our specifications. We've got a whole array of devices now, and they're all too slow. We've got to make some adjustments. You know that Muldoon wants military equipment, TOW missiles, laser-guided devices. Let's leave Muldoon out of this, Hammond said. I'm not worried. It's just the zoo, Henry. Wu tried to think of another way to press his case, but the fact was that after 5 long years, Jurassic Park was nearly completion, and John Hammond just wasn't listening to him anymore.
There had been a time when Hammond listened to Wu very attentively, especially when he had first recruited him, in the days when Henry Wu was a 28-year-old graduate student getting his doctorate at Stanford in Norman Atherton's lab. Atherton's death had thrown the lab into confusion as well as mourning. No one knew what would happen to the funding or the doctoral programs. There was a lot of uncertainty. People worried about their careers. 2 weeks after the funeral, John Hammond came to see Wu. Everyone in the lab knew that Atherton had had some association with Hammond, although the details were never clear, but Hammond had approached Wu with a directness Wu never forgot.
Norman always say you're the best geneticist in his lab. What are your plans now? I don't know. Research. You want a university appointment? Yes. That's a mistake, Hammond said briefly. At least if you respect your talent. Why? Because, let's face facts, Hammond said. Universities are no longer this intellectual center of the country. The very idea is perpetuous. Universities are the backwater. Don't look so surprised. I'm not saying anything you don't know. Since World War II, all the really important discovery has come out of the private laboratories. The lasers, the transistors, the polio vaccine, the microchip, the holograms, the personal computer, magnetic resonance imaging, CAT scans. The list goes on and on. Universities simply aren't where it's happening anymore. And they haven't been for 40 years. If you want to do something important in computers or geneticists, you don't go to a university. Dear me, no. Wu found he was speechless. Good heavens, Hammond said. What must you go through to start a new project? Many grants applications. How many forms? How many approvals? The steering committee. The department chairman. The university resources committee. How do you get more workspace if you need it? More assistants if you need them. How long does all that take? A brilliant man can't squander precious time for forms and committees. Life is too short and DNA too long. You want to make your mark? If you want to get something done, stay out of universities. In those days, Wu desperately wanted to make his mark. John Hammond had his full attention. I'm talking about work, Hammond continued. Real accomplishment. What does a scientist need to work? He needs time, and he needs money. I'm talking about giving you a 5-year commitment, and $10 million a year in funding, $50 million, and no one tells you how to spend it. You decide. Everyone else just get out of your way. It sounded too good to be true. Wu was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, In return for what? For taking a crack at the impossible, Hammond said. For trying something that probably can't be done. What does it involve? I can't give you details, but the general area involves cloning reptiles. I don't think that's impossible, Wu said. Reptiles are easier than mammals. Cloning's probably only 10, 15 years off, assuming some fundamental advance. I've got 5 years, Hammond said, and a lot of money for somebody who wants to take a crack at it now. Is my work publishable? Eventually. Not immediately? No. But eventually publishable? Wu asked, sticking on this point. Hammond had laughed. Don't worry. If you succeed, the whole world will know about what you have done, I promise. And it seems the whole world would indeed know, Wu thought. After 5 years of extraordinary effort, they were just a year away from opening the park to the public. Of course, those years hasn't gone exactly as Hammond had promised. Wu had some people tell him what to do, and many times fearsome pressures were placed on him. And the work itself had shifted. It wasn't even reptilian cloning, once they began to understand that dinosaurs were some similar to birds. It was avian cloning, a very different proposition, much more difficult. It wasn't what he had bargained for. Still, he had succeeded. He had done what nobody really believed could be done, at least in so short of time. And Henry Wu thought that he should have some rights, some say in what happened, by virtue of his expertise and his efforts. Instead, he found himself influenced, wanting with each passing day. The dinosaurs existed. The procedures for obtaining them were worked out to the point of being routine. The technologies were mature, and John Hammond doesn't need Henry Wu anymore. That should be fine, Hammond said, speaking into the phone. Fine. Yes. Fine. He hung up. Where were we, Henry? We were talking about Phase 2, Wu said. Ah, yes. We have gone over some of this before, Henry. I know, but you don't realize... Excuse me, Henry, Hammond said, with an eager of impatience in his voice. I do realize, and I must tell you frankly, Henry, I see no reason to improve upon reality. Every changes we made in genomics have been forced on us by law and necessity. We may make other changes in the future, to resist disease, or for some other reasons. But I don't think we should improve upon reality just because we think it's better that way. We have real dinosaurs out there now. That's what people want to see, and that is what they should see. That's our obligation, Henry. That's honest, Henry. And smiling, Hammond opened the door for him to leave. Grant looked at all the computer monitors in the darkened control room, feeling irritable. Grant didn't like computers. He knew that this made him old-fashioned, dated as a researcher, but he didn't care. Some of the kids who worked for him had a feeling for computers, an intuition. Grant never felt that. He found computers to be alien, mystifying machines. Even the fundamental distinction between an operating system and an application left him confused and disheartened, literally lost in a foreign geographic he didn't begin to comprehend. But he noticed that Gennaro was perfectly comfortable, and Malcolm seems to be in his element, making little sniffing sounds, like a bloodhound on the trail. You want to know about control mechanism? John Arnold said, turning his chair into the control room. The head engineer was a thin, tense, chain-smoking man of 45. He squinted at the others in the room. We have unbelievable control mechanisms, Arnold said, and lit another cigar. For example, Gennaro said. For example, animal tracking. That's our juvenile T-Rex, the little Rex. All his movements within the park over the last 24 hours. Previously 24. The lines on the map became densely overlaid. A child's scribble, but the scribble was located in a single area, near the southwest side of the lagoon. You get a sense of his home range over time, Arnold said. He's young, so he stays close to the water, and he stays away from the big adult Rex. You put the big one in the little Rex, you'll see their paths never cross. Where is the big Rex now? Gennaro asked. He's right there. And the little Rex? Hell, I'll show you every animal in the park, Arnold said. That's 238 animals as of this minute. How accurate? Within 5 feet. Arnold puffed on the cigarette. Let's put it this way. You drive out in a vehicle and you'll find the animals right there, exactly as they're showed on the map. How often is this updated? Every 30 seconds. Pretty impressive, Gennaro said. How's it done? We have monitor sensors all around the park, Arnold said. Most of them hardwired, some radio telemeters. Of course, monitor sensors won't usually tell you the species, but we get image recognition directly off the video. Even when we're not watching the video monitors, the computer is, and checking where everybody is. Does the computer ever make a mistake? Only with the babies. It mixes those up sometimes, because they're such small images, but we don't sweat that. The babies almost always stay close to the herd of the adults. Also, you have the category tally. What's that? Once every 15 minutes, the computer tallies of animals in all categories. Like this. What you see here, Arnold said, is an entirely separate counting procedure. It isn't based on the tracking data. It's a fresh look. The whole idea is that the computer can't make a mistake because it compares two different ways to gather the data. If an animal were missing, We had known it within 5 minutes. I see, Malcolm said. And has that ever actually been tested? Well, in a way, Arnold said. We had a few animals die, and all nearly got caught in the branches of a tree and strangled. One of the stegos died in that intestinal illness that keeps bothering them. One of the Hypsilophodontids fell and broke its neck. And in each case, once the animal stops moving, the numbers stop tailing, and the computer signal an alert. Within 5 minutes? Yes. What is the right-hand column? Releasing versions of the animals. The most recent are version 4.1 or 4.3. We are considering going to version 4.4. Version numbers? You mean like software? New releases? Well, yes, Arnold said. It is like software in a way. As we discovered the glitches in the DNA, Dr. Wu's lab had to make a new version. The idea of living creatures being numbered like software, being subject to updates and revisions troubled Grant. He could not exactly say why. It was too new a thought, but he was instantaneously uneasy about it. They were, after all, living creatures. Look, Dr. Grant, there's no point getting sterile-eyed about these animals. It's important for everyone to remember that these animals are created by man. Sometimes there are bugs. So as we discovered the bugs, Dr. Wu's lab had to make a new version. And we need to keep track of what versions we have out there. Yes, of course you do, Malcolm said impatiently. But going back to the matter of counting, I take it all the counts are based on the monitor sensors? Yes. And these sensors are everywhere in the park? They cover 92% of the land area, Arnold said. There are only a few places we can't use them. For example, we can't use them on the Jungle River because the movement of the water and the convergence rising from the surface screws up the sensors. But we have them nearly everywhere else. And if the computer tracks an animal into an unsensed zone, it'll remember and look for the animal to come out again. And if it doesn't, it gives us an alarm. Now then, Malcolm said, you show 49 Proconsagothus. Suppose I suspect that some of them aren't really the correct species. How would you show me that I'm wrong? 2 ways, Arnold said. First of all, I can track individual movements against the other presumed compies. Compies are social animals. They move in groups. We have 2 compy groups in the park, so the individual should be within either Group A or Group B. Yes, but the other way is direct visual. These pictures are current ID images from within the last 5 minutes, so you can see all the animals if you wanted to. Yes, I can visual review all the animals whenever I want. How about physical containment? Gennaro said. Can they get out of their enclosures? Absolutely not, Arnold said. These are expensive animals, Mr. Gennaro. We take very good care of them. We maintain multiple barriers. First, the mount. These mounds are never less than 50 feet deep and water-filled. For bigger animals, the mount may be 30 feet deep. Next, the electrified fences. We have 50 miles of 12-foot-high fencing, including 22 miles around the perimeter of the island. All the park fences carry 10,000 voltage. The animals quickly learn not to go near them. But if one did get out, Gennaro said. Arnold snorted and stubbed out his cigar. Just hypothetically, Gennaro said. Suppose it happened. We'd go out and get the animals back. We have lots of ways to do that. Taser shotguns, electrified nets, tranquilizers. All non-lethal, because as Mr. Arnold said, these are expensive animals. Gennaro nodded. And if one got off the island, it'd die in less than 24 hours, Arnold said. These are genetically engineered animals. They're unable to survive in the real world. How about this controlling system itself? Gennaro said. Could anybody tamper with it? Arnold was shaking his head. The system is hardened. The computer is independent in every way. Independent power and independent backup power. The system does not communicate with the outside, so it cannot be influenced remotely by modern. The computer system is secure. There was a pause. Arnold puffed his cigarette. Hell of a system, he said. Hell of a goddamn system. Then I guess your system works so well, you don't have any problems. We have got endless problems here, Arnold said, raising an eyebrow. But none of the things you are worried about. I gather you're worried that the animals will escape, and will get to the mainland and raise hell. We haven't got any concern about that at all. We see these animals as fragile and delicate. They have been brought back after 65 million years to a world that's very different from one they left, the one they were adapted to. We have a hell of a time caring for them. You have to realize that men have been keeping mammals and reptiles in zoos for thousands of years, so we know a lot about taking care of an elephant or a croc, but nobody has ever tried to take care of a dinosaur before. They are new animals, and we just don't know. Diseases in our animals are the biggest concern. Diseases? Gennaro said, suddenly alarmed. Is there any way that the visitors could get sick? Arnold snorted again. You ever catch an odd cold from a zoo alligator, Mr. Gennaro? Zoos don't worry about that. Neither do we. What we do worry about is the animal dying from their own illnesses, or infecting other animals. But we have programs to monitor that too. You want to see the Big Rex health file? His vaccination records? His dental records? That's something. You ought to see vets scramble those big fangs so he doesn't get toothache. Not just now, Gennaro said. What about your mechanical systems? You mean the rides? Arnold said. Grant looked up sharply. Rides? None of the rides are running yet, Arnold was saying. We have the Jungle River ride, where the boats follow tracks on the water. And we have the Aviary Lodge ride, but none of it is operational yet. The park will open with the basic dinosaur tour, the one you're about to take in a few minutes. The other rides will come in line 12 months after that. Wait a minute, Grant said. You're going to have rides? Like an amusement park? This is a zoological park. We have tours of different areas, and we call them rides. That's right. Grant frowned. Again, he felt troubled. He didn't like the idea of dinosaurs being used for an amusement park. Malcolm continued his question. You can run the whole park from this control room? Yes, Arnold said. I can run it single-handed, if I have to. We have got that much automation built in. The computer by itself can track the animals, feed them, and fill their water thrust for 48 hours without supervision. This is the system Mr. Nedry designed? Malcolm asked. Dennis Nedry was sitting at the terminal in the far corner of the room, eating a candy bar and typing. Yes, that's right, Nedry said, not looking up from the keyboard. It's a hell of a system, Arnold said proudly. That's right, Nedry said absently. Just one or two minor bugs to fix. Now, Arnold said, I see the tour is starting, so unless you have other questions. Actually, just one, Malcolm said. Just a research question. You showed us you can track the Proconsagophis, and you can display them individually. Can you do any studies of them as a group? Measuring them or whatever? If I wanted to know weight and height or... We can do all that, and very quickly, Arnold said. The computer takes measurement data in the course of reading the video screens, so it is translatable at once. You see here we have a normal Gaussian distribution for the animal population. It shows that most of the animals cluster around an average central valley, and a few are either large or small than the average, at the tails of the curve. You expect that kind of graph? Malcolm said. Yes, any healthy biological population show this kind of distribution. Now then, Arnold said, lighting another cigar. Are there any other questions? No, Malcolm said. I have learned what I needed to know. It looks like a pretty good system to me. I don't see how any animals could get off this island. Don't worry, Malcolm said. I thought it was completely obvious. Wait a minute. You think animals have gotten out? I know they have. But how? You saw for yourself. They can count all the animals. They can look at all the animals. They know where all the animals are all times. How can one possibly escape? Malcolm smiled. It's quite obvious. It's just a matter of your assumption. Your assumption, Gennaro repeated, frowning. Yes, Malcolm said. Look here. The basic event that has occurred in Jurassic Park is that the scientists and technicians have tried to make a new, completed biological world. And the scientists in the control room expect to see a natural world, as in the gap they just show us. Even though a moment's thought revealed that nice, normal distribution is terribly worrisome on this island. It is? Yes. Based on what Dr. Wu told us earlier, one should never see a population graph like that. Why not? Gennaro said. Because that is a graph for a normal biological population, which is precisely what Jurassic Park is not. Jurassic Park is not a real world. It is intended to be a controlled world that only imitates the natural world. In that sense, it's a true park, rather like a Japanese former garden. Nature manipulated to be more natural than the real thing, if you will. I'm afraid you have lost me, Gennaro said, looking annoyed. I'm sure the tour will make everything clear, Malcolm said. This way, everyone, this way, Ed Regis said.
By his side, a woman was passing out pith helmets with Jurassic Park labeled on the headband and a little blue dinosaur logo. A line of Toyota Land Cruisers came out of an underground garage beneath the visitor center, each car pulled up, driverless and silent. 2 black men in safari uniforms were opening the doors for passengers. 2 to 4 passengers to a car, please. Passengers to a car, a recorded voice was saying. Children under 10 must be accompanied by an adult. 2 to 4 passengers to a car, please. Tim watched as Grant, Sattler, and Malcolm got into the first Land Cruiser with a lawyer, Gennaro. Tim looked over at Lex, who was standing, pounding her fist into her glove.
Can I go with them? I'm afraid they have things to discuss, Ed Regis said. Technical things. I'm interested in technical things, Tim said. I'd rather go with them. Well, you'll be able to hear what they're saying, Ed Regis said. We'll have a radio open between the cars.
The second car came. Tim and Lex got in, and Ed Regis followed.
These are electric cars, Regis said, guided by a cable in the roadway.
Tim was glad he was sitting in the front seat because mounted in the dashboard were 2 computer screens and a box that looked to him like a CD-ROM. That was a laser disc player controlled by a computer. There was also a portable walkie-talkie and some kind of a radio transmitter. There were 2 antennas on the roof and some odd goggles in the map pocket. The black men shut the doors of the Land Cruiser. The car started off with an electric hum. Up ahead, the 3 scientists and Gennaro were talking and pointing, clearly excited.
Let's hear what they're saying. I don't know what the hell you think you're doing. I know quite well why I'm here. You're here to advise me, not play goddamn mind games. I got 5% of this company and a responsibility to make sure that Hammond has done his job responsibly. Now you goddamn come here. In keeping with the non-polluting policy of Jurassic Park, these lightweight electric Land Cruiser have been specially built for us by Toyota in Osaka. Eventually, we hope to drive among the animals, just as they do in African game parks. But for now, sit back and enjoy the self-guided tour. And by the way, we can hear you back here. Oh, Christ. I have to be able to speak freely. I didn't ask for those damn kids to come. We'll just begin the show, shall we?
Welcome to Jurassic Park. You are now entering the lost world of the prehistoric past, a world of mighty creatures long gone from the face of the earth, which you are privileged to see for the first time.
That's Richard Kyler, Ed Regis said. We spare no expense.
Notice, first of all, the remarkable plant life that surrounds you. Those trees to your left and right are called cycads, the prehistoric predecessors of palm trees. Cycads were a favorite food of the dinosaurs. You can also see Bennettitalians and ginkgos. The world of the dinosaur included more modern plants, such as pine and fir trees and swamp cypresses. You will see these as well. The Land Cruiser moved slowly among the foliage. Tim noticed the fences and retaining walls were screened by greenery to heighten the illusion of moving through real jungle. We imagine the world of the dinosaurs as a world of huge vegetarians, eating their way through the giant swampy forests of the Jurassic and Cretaceous world 100 million years ago. But most dinosaurs were not as large as people think. The smallest dinosaurs were no bigger than a house cat. We are first going to visit one of these average-sized animals, called Hypsilophodons. If you look to your left, you may catch a glimpse of them now. They all look to the left. The Land Cruiser stopped on a low rise where a break in the foliage provided a view to the east. They could see a sloping forested area which opened into a field of yellow grass that was about 3 feet high. There were no dinosaurs.
Where are they? Lex said.
Tim looked at the dashboard. The transmitter lights blinked and the CD-ROM whirred. Obviously, the disc was being accessed by some automatic system. He guessed that the same motion sensors that tracked the animals also controlled the screens in the land cruiser. The screens now showed pictures of hypsilophodonts and printed out data about them. Hypsilophodonts are the gazelles of the dinosaur world, small, quick animals that once roamed everywhere in the world, from England to Central Asia to North America. We think these dinosaurs were so successful because they had better jaws and teeth for chewing plants than their contemporaries did. In fact, the name hypsilophodontid means high-ridged tooth, which refers to the characteristic self-sharpening teeth of these animals. You can see them in the plains directly ahead, and also perhaps in the branches of the trees.
In the trees? Lex said. Dinosaurs in the trees? To the right, he said. Halfway up that big green trunk.
In the dappled shadows of the tree, a motionless dark green animal about the size of a baboon stood on a branch. It looked like a lizard standing on its hind legs. It balanced itself with a long, drooping tail.
That's an Ophnelia, Tim said.
The small animals you see are called Ophnelia, in honor of the 19th century dinosaur hunter Othniel Marsh of Yale. Tim spotted two more animals on the higher branches of the same tree. They were all about the same size. None of them were moving.
Pretty boring, Lex said. They're not doing anything.
The main herd of animals can be found in the grassy plain below you. We can rouse them with a simple mating call. A loudspeaker by the fence gave a long nasal call, like the honking of geese. From the field of grass directly to their left, 6 lizard heads poked up, one after another. The effect was comical, and Tim laughed. The heads disappeared. The loudspeaker gave the call again, and once again the heads poked up, in exactly the same way, one after another. The fixed repetition of the behavior was striking. Hypsilophodonts are not especially bright animals. They have roughly the intelligence of a domestic cow. The heads were dull green, with a mottling of dark browns and blacks that extended down the slender necks. Judging from the size of the heads, Tim guessed their bodies were 4 feet long, about as large as deer. Some of the hypsilophodonts were chewing, the jaws working. One reached up and scratched its head with a 5-fingered hand. The gesture gave the creature a pensive, thoughtful quality. If you see them scratching, that is because they have skin problems. The veterinary scientists here at Jurassic Park think it may be a fungus or an allergy, but they're not sure yet. After all, these are the first dinosaurs in history ever to be studied alive. The electric motor of the car started, and there was a grinding of gears. At the unexpected sound, the herd of hypsilophodonts suddenly leapt into the air and bounded above the grass like kangaroos, showing their full bodies with massive hind limbs and long tails in the afternoon sunlight. In a few leaps, they were gone. Now that we've had a look at these fascinating herbivores, we will go on to some dinosaurs that are a little larger. Quite a bit larger, in fact. The land cruisers continued onward, moving south through Jurassic Park.